I'm going to do a timing belt on a 2009 Kia Rio with a 1.6. Should be pretty simple, straightforward for a guy like me. Got some 10 millimeters on here. This thing. I can't guarantee that this would work, but it should. If you don't have an impact wrench, you can get one of these at Harbor Freight. It's a vice grip on a chain, and you wrap it around here and clamp it down and then take that off by hand. It might work for you. That's a 22 millimeter. Then you got a 14 millimeter on this pulley here you want to get off. You just loosen it up. And then there's an adjuster on the back of it. The adjuster's a 12 millimeter. Now before you get this alternator belt loose, you're going to want to get in here with a 10 millimeter and loosen these bolts up here. You don't need to take them off yet. You just need to loosen them so they're easy to get off when you get that far. I'm going to loosen up the alternator. I'm going to take this wire clip off of here just because it's in my way. This wire's kind of tight. I'm going to push this in and try to get this thing out of here. There. You want to loosen up this alternator bolt, 12 millimeter. And you got this adjuster bolt here. That bolt, that's a 12 millimeter as well. Then on this power steering pump, there's two holes in this pulley. You want to take a 19 millimeter or whatever to crank this engine over so you can get access to this one bolt. That's a 12 millimeter. There's a 12 millimeter here. Then you got to get underneath the car. There's a 12 millimeter right here for the alternator, so you can loosen that belt up. You just want to get this loose. You're going to have your car jacked up and supported on jack stands or something. And you want to put a block of wood in a jack. You want to put a block of wood in a jack under the oil pan. You want to use a block of wood just so you don't take the chance of damaging the pan. You just put it on the pan very lightly because you got to get these bolts out of here. This is your front mount. You got to take that off. This here's just a vibration dampener, so that can stay on there. This ground is a 12 millimeter. And this big one here is a 17 millimeter. You want to jack it up because the engine fell a little bit, so it's stuck. You just want to jack it up a little bit until it loosens up and it pops right off. Okay, now I can start getting at all these belts. You can jack this up ever so slightly. If you feel too much resistance, stop. Well, that's as far as it'll go. And I just did that so I can get more room in here. I'm just going to get in here with a pry bar and try to move this alternator a little. There it goes. There, pull on the belt. I can get this belt off. Then the next one is this power steering belt. Doesn't like to come off, but now that I got the alternator belt off, it's this water pump pulley. It's not connected to anything, so I can just kind of twist it off like this. I can get this pulley off here. These can be a little fun to put back on because there's no studs on here, and this pulley's in two pieces. Now that pulley on the bottom, the crankshaft pulley, it should just pull straight out. You just wanna wiggle it back and forth while you pull it out, and it comes right out. Now on this pulley, there's supposed to be a mark on here for 0. You can barely see it because it's all rusty. It's there though, and I'm gonna make it more noticeable. I got 5 bolts total on this top cover. Okay, I got that mark down on the crankshaft lined up, and then this mark is lined up. Somebody put some cheesy little red marks on here to line this up, but what you really want to do, you really want to look in this hole. What I do, it's at a funky angle, so what I always do with these is I take a flashlight and I shine it into a mirror, and I can see the little red mark in the hole, so I know that it's lined up right. So now I'm going to want to take this pulley bolt back off. Take this pulley off. Then I got a bottom cover. I got a few more 10mm bolts I got to take off to get this cover off. You got this thing on here too. A little metal dust cover that just comes straight off after you get the balancer off. Okay, now I let the jack down so the engine falls, so I got a little more room to work with because I got to get everything here. There's a 12mm on this tensioner. You want to loosen that up. Loosen this one up a hair. It should be good and loose. So you want to push up on I just use a pry bar to push up on this. And you want to tighten this bolt back down. There, now I can get this belt off. Now on this, there's a notch in a dot. Make sure this crankshaft's lined up. This pulley I'm going to replace, so I can go ahead and just take these off now. This spring, it goes on this side like that. So you just want to kind of, there's a tab right here. You want to get the spring on the other side. Basically just put it on the same way you take it off. It's kind of funky the way they got this thing. I really don't like it, but whatever. I actually just got it started on there, and now I'm gonna somehow, like some kind of magic, try to get this tab on with a pry bar, a little screwdriver, whatever. Okay, 2 screwdrivers. I'm gonna pry it. Oops. I don't know what the real trick is for this, but yeah, I just pry it over and push it on there. There, I got it. I'm going to tighten this down a little more. Make sure it doesn't pop off. I got to try to get this other bolt started. Put this tensioner all the way up and tighten it down. I got this pulley I'm going to replace. And I'll make sure this pulley spins, just because that's what I do. That center bolt, that gets torqued to 40 foot-pounds if you really care. That the side with the idler pulley on is tight. This is the drive side. You want to make sure that that's going to be tight when you put this around the crankshaft. And the other side, which is the tensioner side, is the driven side. So you want to make sure that the driven side is the loose side. This side right here. because that's the side that's going to get tension, and the other side should be tight. I'm just going to double check my marks. Yep, I can see the red dot inside of there. And the mark down on the crankshaft, that notch down on the crankshaft is lined up pretty close. And like I say, this side is loose because it's the driven side, and this side is tight. So I know I know it's not a half a tooth off or a tooth off. So now I'm going to want to loosen up that tensioner bolt and tighten up that tensioner. There, and I just apply a little bit of force on this tensioner just to get everything nice and tight. And then I'll tighten this tensioner bolt back down. I'll leave this one loose still. So now what I'm going to want to do is I put this pulley on, because that'll hold the sprocket in all the way. I want to put the pulley bolt back on. And I want to crank this over 2 revolutions to line everything back up. See, and that's going to move this belt around so it's going to get lined up the way it's supposed to make sure I got this tension right. Then I can take the pulley back off. Okay, now I cranked it over 2 revolutions, and I just want to double check my marks just because I can. This one looks good. Okay, now I want to recheck the tension. So I'm going to loosen this bolt up a little bit. And of course it didn't move because it's probably fine. I'm just going to get a pry bar and just tweak this just a little bit. And you can see the tensioner getting tight and loose. And just let it fall on its own. It's actually right where it was to begin with. You want to tighten these to about 20 foot-pounds. I just put my thumb on it and push on it. It feels right. I guess you gotta be me to know that. Install 5 bolts on bottom cover. And tighten to not vary. Don't forget the dust cover. I'm just going to put this on loosely for now. I'll torque it down later. What I do to line these up is I face this water pump straight up. And I put the pulleys on one at a time. Straight up. These things can be a real pain sometimes. And I got those straight up, and then I take a 4mm Allen wrench and I stick it in here, and well, if I'm lucky, I find the hole. Okay, I got those on. I'm not going to go get those tight yet either. I'm going to put this belt on next. I'm going to start with the power steering. Just want to use a pry bar on this. Now that I got the alternator belt tight, I can go ahead and tighten these up. Now for this mount, you can just kind of drop it in like this, and you want to get this level, so you want to jack the thing down or whatever way you need to do just to get this to fall in like that. Alternator bolt. Now that you got all these belts on, a good way to check these serpentine belts is to twist them. And you should be able to turn it a quarter turn. If you can twist it over a quarter turn, then it's too loose. And that one's about almost too loose. It's about right. And this bolt gets torqued to 108 foot-pounds. You gotta find a way to hold this down so you can torque this thing. Like I say, you can use one of them vice grips with a chain on it with the belts off of it, or some other way. I don't know. The way I do it, I just use a torque stick on an impact because I've done it so many times. And it works for me. I just put a 100-pound torque stick on it. Then I'll go a little more just for good measure. You're probably going to want to use a torque wrench just because you're you.